Welcome to Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. Joyous conversations about what the afterlife evidence and modern science combine to tell us is true about our one reality. You have nothing to fear. You are eternal and you are perfectly loved. Knowing the truth changes everything. Now, here's Roberta.
Welcome to Seek Reality. I'm Roberta Grimes, and I'm delighted that you're with us today. Our beautiful guest today is TJ Woodward. He's an old friend of mine, and he is what I've come to think of as kind of a public visionary, if you will. His special calling has been helping people with substance abuse issues, and that has led him to venture even far beyond that. I first met TJ and interviewed him in 2015, right after I read Awakening to Your True Nature, which actually is called, the whole book is called Conscious Being, Awakening to Your True Nature. But I was boggled by his book because, to my amazement, I saw it as fundamentally my own Liberating Jesus, which was a channeled book by Jesus. But his book was based in Eastern religious teachings and not in the teachings of Jesus. I was flabbergasted by TJ's book and by him. Some people have been so traumatized by the fear-based nature of Christianity, which, as you know, is not a religion that Jesus started. It was started by the Romans. And as that book, that religion is being practiced now, a lot of people really don't want to hear those truths, even though they came from Jesus. And so they can just read TJ Woodward's book and they can get the same truths. An amazing book. And then his second book, also wonderful, was called Conscious Recovery, a fresh perspective on addiction. And his third book was Conscious Creation, 5 Steps to Embracing the Life of Your Dreams. Obviously, TJ understands consciousness as few people do. TJ Woodward, for a time, was the senior minister and spiritual director of Agape Bay Area in Oakland, California, which is the first satellite community of the Agape International Spiritual Center in Los Angeles. He's moved on from there, and we're going to catch up with him today. My dear friend TJ Woodward is the creator of the Conscious Recovery Method, which is a groundbreaking and quite effective approach to viewing and treating addictions. And he's the creator and host of the Awakened Living TV and Awakened Living radio shows. My lovely friend TJ is kind of a ball of fire, as you're about to see. TJ, welcome. It's so good to have you back with us again.
Oh my goodness, Roberta, I'm so grateful to be here with you. I do feel like we're not going to say old friends. We're going to say young friends together for quite some time.
Yes, I love it. That's better. That's probably better.
Yes.
But my dear, tell me what you've been up to. What have you been up to lately?
Well, what have I not been up to lately? So many different things. I still continue to do a lot of work with conscious recovery. My intention with conscious recovery is to help people actually get down and heal the root causes of their addiction. And through this lens of consciousness, I have discovered that people feel so broken, especially people who have addiction who are in early recovery. So that's still the primary focus of my work, but it's shifted a little. I work more with the people who are providing care now rather than the clients themselves or the people in recovery, because I think people who are healers can get really burnt out, and I want to help reinvigorate their passion for the work. So that's really what I've been doing. I have a couple big things I'm working on, but I also, conscious creation, I'm spending more energy there because I see people really wanting to shift their life, but struggling to try to figure out, how do I actually embrace the life of my dreams? So I'm up to a lot of different things, but that's sort of an
Well, I've been thinking a lot about addictions because we have more and more people in this country whose lives are being damaged by addictions. And I don't understand addictions myself. What is it that makes people start with addictions? Have you given insights? Do you have insights that you can share about that?
Yeah, I mean, my entire book, Conscious Recovery, is about that. I think the old way of viewing addiction was we looked at it as a disease or some sort of chemical or genetic predisposition to addiction. And that may be part of it, but I think there's something much more happening. So I'm looking at it through the spiritual or the consciousness lens. And what I've discovered is that people feel so damaged and broken. I've identified the root causes of addiction as unresolved trauma, spiritual disconnection, and toxic shame. And I think sometimes when we think about addiction, we think of drugs or alcohol, and it's so much broader than that. I think in America and in the world, for that matter, we're actually really highly addicted. And my simplest definition of addiction is using something outside of ourselves, whether that's shopping or drugs or a
Oh,
relationship
shopping
or
could be an
drama.
addiction too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to try to assuage or to heal something that feels broken within, it's when it becomes repetitive and starts causing problems that we call it an addiction.
So there's a deficit maybe from childhood,
Yeah.
and we're trying to fill that hole or that space
Yes.
inside ourselves.
Yeah, the foundation of my work, especially conscious recovery, is recognizing that we come in, and this goes back to conscious being and your channeling with the teachings of Jesus, that we are essentially these beautiful, whole, and perfect beings, and that we're infinite beings. We're not limited, but we get programmed by the world to believe that we are damaged, broken, or limited, and that's usually not conscious.
I
And
remember
because of
Matt
that,
talking about this book. I remember this
yeah.
conversation. Yes, yes.
Yeah, because
Oh,
people feel so damaged and broken, they're looking for relief, and then they find relief, and we can become addicted to the thing that brings that relief.
my goodness. Pardon me, I think it's
Yeah.
spring. Oh, yes, it must be spring. Oh, so all right, so what do you do? Someone says, someone listening says, "Oh, I think I have an addictive personality because I know I've got a shopping thing, or I feel I'm trying to avoid being an alcoholic." This is, I have a relative who had, my father was an alcoholic, and we have it in the family, kind of. This is a thing in my family. I've never had it, but others have. So what if you're someone who says, I think I could become addicted? How do I avoid becoming addicted? You have advice for people who might be thinking, I could become addicted? So
Well,
what would TJ say? I love being able to help people avoid this.
yeah, I mean it's tricky because the one thing about addiction, unlike many things, is we almost self-identify, right? Who gets to decide when we've crossed the line to addiction? I think traditionally we would say, well, there are some obvious signs, right? You know, if someone is gambling so much and they're spending the family savings.
Another thing is gambling. Oh my goodness. Yeah, there's a lot of things.
Yeah, a lot of things, right? So anything outside of ourselves. I think the framework that I offer in conscious recovery is I offer the possibility that addiction in any different form, and that word may not work for anyone or someone. We might say any repetitive behavior that I'm doing.
Right.
We look at it not as a problem, but as a brilliant strategy. We say we at some point this worked. It helped us. It helped us to feel whole, or it helped us to not feel the pain that we were experiencing. We don't want to look at it through the lens of shame, but then we want to start asking, is it really serving me? Is drinking or gambling or shopping, whatever it is that really bringing me the peace and the happiness that I truly desire? I think that's the big question for someone to reflect on.
Okay. And is there some benign thing, perhaps, that would also make me feel whole? Um, are there placebo things people can do that are not going to harm them, that would make them feel whole? Are there
Well,
things like that?
So, Roberta, you and I know that ultimately we're going back now to our original conversation about conscious being and your wonderful book that you channeled with the teachings of Jesus. That really is only an inside job ultimately. And that's why I say we live in a really highly addictive culture because, we're addicted to drama. We're addicted to Fox News or CNN. We're addicted to like everything happening with the presidents. Like that really doesn't really affect us in the way we believe it does, right? There's so many layers to the things that we're looking outside of ourselves. And so you and I know that the journey is a journey inward toward our wholeness,
Yeah.
tapping into that.
So if we become addicted instead to spiritual growth, then that will help us begin to feel whole.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, much, much better, right?
Yes. Okay. That makes me feel much better, actually. Yes. Okay. But so ultimately then you end up with the broken people, the people who feel that they need to find a way out, and that's how you help them with conscious recovery.
Yeah, and I love that you framed it that way because the people who I've worked with who are coming out of an addiction believe they're broken, but you and I know they're really not broken. And that's the fundamental difference with conscious recovery because a lot of the frameworks, if you will, of recovery, whether that's support groups or the medical model, they're looking at the person as broken or damaged and how do we fix them? What are your symptoms? How do we eradicate them? But we know
Yes,
the holistic approach is actually you came into the world as a whole infinite spiritual being. How do we get
yes,
back to that? What needs to be unlearned so that we can return to our own magnificence?
yes.
And when I first started working in the field in 2008, it was somewhat controversial to say these things, but I'm grateful now that more and more of us are realizing that this approach makes a massive difference in a person's life. Shame doesn't heal shame.
Yes, yes. So now how are you serving people? Do you do individual counseling? Do you do group counseling?
I no longer work with anyone individually. I did just launch group coaching with Conscious Creation. It's an online course that people take, walking through my 5-step process to embracing the life of your dreams, along with weekly group coaching sessions. And that's actually launching August 1st, the session. So I'm excited about that because I really just honestly miss working with people, but I don't have the bandwidth or the time to work with individuals anymore just because of everything that I'm doing in the world. But I just really wanted to drop in and I asked myself, how can I serve? How can I be supportive to people? And the idea of doing group coaching emerged. So I'm looking forward to that launching. It's going to be something new for me, and I'm very grateful and excited about it.
What are these 5 steps? You said there were 5 steps?
Yeah, so my book Conscious Creation, it came out a few years ago, but honestly, I'm giving it the energy that I think it's requiring now. I kind of just it came out like in an odd time. It was actually supposed to come out in 2020, and with everything happening with COVID and in the world, I sat and I thought, well, it could be exactly what one might need during COVID, but there was just so much in the world that I just said, let me pause. So it came out in 2021, and honestly, I just haven't done much with it yet. So the 5 steps, I've given it an acronym, MOVIE, MOVIE, and the essential premise is that we're holding the projector of our life and we're creating reality based on the lens. So if you want, I can go through all 5 steps
Yeah,
and
do. Oh, do.
yeah.
I'm interested in this. Yes.
So step 1 is making peace with the past. Step 2 is overcoming core false beliefs. Step 3 is visioning. Step 4 is intention setting. And 5, embodying the vision.
Well, that's like a whole college curriculum that you could spend 4 years doing that right. You really
And
could.
we might in this group coaching. It's going to be really wonderful to see what emerges and who signs up and what we start to explore together. Because if you look at making peace with the past, that could be several months of working with that, because
Yes.
what I have discovered is that most people they want to create their life by starting with intentions and goal setting, right? We do that as New Year's Day. Let's, create our New Year's resolutions. But there's something much deeper here, because we don't create on a conscious level as much as we're unconsciously creating our life. So we
Yes.
want to start to explore what's in the unconscious, because that's really what's creating what we
Yes.
call reality.
A lot of people don't understand that. Yes. So you have to basically build the projector before you can even think about showing the movie. So this is really this is a very basic thing you're doing, and people don't even understand how unconscious so much of the work they've done in building their life is.
Right.
So wow, this is huge.
Because the analogy I like to use, and I take this from Byron Katie, and I give her credit in the book, but she said it's as if we're holding the projector and there's a piece of lint on the lens. We see that lint everywhere and we believe it's happening out in the world. But the truth is, it's our piece of lint on the lens. So the
Yeah,
making peace with the past and the overcoming core false beliefs is really clearing that lens, clearing it, so that I'm not just carrying my past unconsciously into every situation. So
right.
we can spend a lot of time on those first two steps for sure, so that
Oh
we can
yeah. Oh yeah.
become clearer about what we want to create.
Yes. And very often, in order to do it properly, we need to know where that piece of lint came from. So what is it carrying forward, and where did that come from? We need to really, really clean it all and make it whole.
That's right. And usually these, what I call core false beliefs, but really it's a vibration or a frequency that we're carrying, almost always come from an early childhood experience where we've decided or absorbed things from the world that are counter to this knowing that we're actually infinite beings. A little child, a very small child, knows their magnificence. They know their luminosity. That's who they are. But then we start to train them. Oh no, that's not who you are. I mean, back when I was a kid, it was don't, you're getting too big for your britches, It's like a lot
Um,
of like what we need to do in these first two steps is really start to unlearn and examine all those agreements that we made with ourselves that really are limiting.
and then what was the O?
Overcoming core false beliefs.
Yeah, false beliefs. I knew that there were false beliefs near the start, because that's another thing that you could spend a whole year on, because those false beliefs, in order for you to get people to really drop them, you almost have to figure out where they all came from, because people hold them. And I'm teaching a course right now too, and I know how devoted people can become to wrong think and literal wrong think, because they think it's right think. And I've got to sometimes fight to get those wrong beliefs away from people. Fortunately, they believe in Jesus, and we're using the teachings of Jesus to wrestle those beliefs away from people. But wow, it can be hard sometimes.
Yeah, and like I said, they are developed so early in life that it's not a conscious process or not a
Right.
cognitive process, right? Our brains aren't even developed enough. So, for example, when I was 7 years old, I remember having the experience of feeling like the world was no longer safe. And I remember a wall coming around, like it felt like a wall was coming around and building a wall around my heart. And that protected me in so many ways. So, it's not so much about like, let me change my narrative or change my thinking as it is, let me go back to what it was like before 7 and what led to that moment where I had that wall that was built, and quite frankly, start to reparent the younger self and have a different relationship, because that my little kid didn't have a place to feel, didn't have a place to express any of this. So I shut down, and that shutting down did help, but then it became that wall. And anytime things would get difficult, I would, put a wall between myself and the world. So starting to unlearn that and overcome these core false beliefs can be a process, but it really is not a process that happens only in the mind.
But how do you do this when it's a course and there are multiple people in the course, and they all have different false beliefs with different origins? that will be hard, won't it?
Well, the interesting part about that is, and I'll be careful how I say this, it's not really as much what happened. It's more about what we decided and what we absorbed. So if there are seven people, let's say we have 7 or 8 people in the Zoom room, if you will, and we're working with core false beliefs, it doesn't necessarily matter that everyone have a similar or the same experience. It's more about like, let's remember one of those experiences and remember what you absorbed and what you decided. And let's go back to that younger self and start to reparent, allow that younger self to feel, allow that younger self, quite frankly, to have a different conclusion because we didn't have the information. You know, in my journey, my mother had undiagnosed mental health concerns. My dad had some very interesting addictions. And because of that, I
Yeah, yeah.
believed I was not good enough. And that's not true. It was really their unhealed trauma. But my 6-year-old didn't know that. My 5-year-old didn't know that, right? So I absorbed it.
Oh my goodness, yeah. So these will be very small groups that you'll teach.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I do think in the beginning it might be smaller, but we can also get much larger, and there's ways to work with that as well.
Yeah, that's true. You could break up into smaller groups for more
Yes,
intensive teaching.
absolutely.
Okay, and then what's the V?
V is visioning.
Okay, so we've sort of done the initial work and we've sort of cleared things out and made a space where we
Yeah.
can start to vision. And so
Yes.
how do you lead that? I'm dying to hear.
Well, I love that you're saying clear out because it's exactly what I call the first 2 steps. I call them the clearing steps, right? So we're
Yeah.
clearing the lens. We're looking at like what all this stuff that we've been carrying in the unconscious. And once we're there, and there's no finish line, like you said, it's not like, oh, I've completely overcome all my core false beliefs. I've made peace with everything. But as we've moved more into that, we can start to then become aware of that inner voice. You know, Jesus, I believe, called it the still small voice. And I don't have the Christian background, so you can tell me if that's true. But the idea of the small voice can become much louder, right? Most of us have forgotten that our intuition is so powerful. And so visioning, and I use my friend Michael Beckwith's framework, his life visioning process, where we get quiet and we listen intently to that inner voice and we ask questions and we listen for guidance. So it's very different than visualization. We're not trying to figure out what we want and how we create it. We're, to the best of our ability, moving away from that and listening to that inner voice.
And the inner voice is helping us to create possibilities, imagine possibilities, not frame them yet, but more allow them to develop as possibilities.
That's right. So you
Okay.
know exactly what this is. I love it. It's asking the questions because the first question, and again, I'm using Michael's framework. The first question is, what's the highest possibility for my life now? And you just
Yes.
and then we learn how to be in touch with that intuition. We come in with that like a young child. A pre-programmed human is very in touch with their intuition. They're very connected with it. But most of us have been taught to not trust that or listen to it. So this is about getting back to listening to that. And then, as you said earlier, we don't go right into action yet. We let that emerge. Oh, isn't that interesting? I wonder if my intuition is wanting to guide me in a slightly different direction.
Because a lot of what you're really doing is helping them reconnect with what they once were and can be again.
That's exactly it.
I think this is wonderful. This is
Thank you.
great.
Because it's really different. A lot of the models are like figure out what you want and learn how to like manifest that. And we talk about the law of attraction and the very idea that I need to attract something in order to be happy, by its very nature is already saying that I lack that. And what you and I are so passionate about is let's get back to this infinite being that we are, and that infinite
Already are.
being
Yeah,
holds
and
so
have
much
been eternally.
information
Yes.
always. And who we come back maybe time after time on planet Earth. Maybe we go to other planets. I don't know, but we evolve. And as we evolve, we learn to trust that more and more.
Yes. Yes. Anybody who has ever parented children knows that this newborn that was born this morning, you look into the face of that child and you know this is an old, old soul. This is the soul was not born fresh this morning.
That is for sure.
And yeah, there's and as they grow, we realize that they're just, oh, they've been here before. They're not there. And so what you're doing is really helping them reconnect with that newborn child that they were, so that they can maybe take a different direction and with the life that they're living. I think that's exactly wonderful.
Yeah, because that's innate in the human experience. And I think sometimes we forget that. I mean, I remember one time when I lived in San Francisco, I had a Vespa, which, we could talk about that. That was a little dangerous, but I did it for many years. But I was on the corner at a light, and this a man had his child on top of his shoulders, and the child, I'm going to guess, was around 3 years old, and our eyes locked. And we just stayed connected all the way across the street and down the
Oh,
block.
wow.
And I remember thinking, that's what it means to be human. That is spirit. And that child hasn't had that taught out of them yet. So we were just connecting on a soul level. And that really is how life can be as we unlearn and dismantle all the stuff that we've been taught, whether it's religion or education systems or family systems, so that we can come back to that place of ultimate presence. So, the personality and the things that we get taught can be important and can be useful, but the ultimate self, the essential self, that really is the truth of who we are. And so the conscious creation process helps us get back to that.
I really think that as you sell this course to people and invite them to become part of it, I really think you ought to let them know this is what you're doing for them.
Mm,
Because then you're speaking to that child who they were.
yes.
You're inviting them to have the experience of getting rid of the junk and all that's accumulated since, and saying that that it is possible to reconnect with
Mm.
who you were and can be again. And then we can take it then in a different direction, because that's exactly what you're going to be doing for them. And speaking to that child at that level, and knowing that you have the power to help them actually do this. This is so powerful.
Thank you. Yeah, it was my journey. In my early life, as I said, I closed off at age 7 and walked around feeling broken. I myself became addicted to drugs and alcohol from ages 14 through 21. I got sober really young at 21, just before I turned 21. But that journey in my 20s was still this belief in brokenness and continuing to re-experience it and not understanding that really essentially I had the power to heal that. And I just, that journey that I went on toward returning to my true nature has become my life's work, because it's changed my life in such a beautiful way that I just want to share it with the world, like this lighthouse, like, please let me share with you this possibility that we can reconnect with that part of ourselves and live from that and have a very different life as a result of that.
Oh, absolutely. So what's the I for? What does the I stand for?
Intention setting. This is where we do become more practical and more tangible and more concrete, if you will.
Right.
Once we've cleared away and done enough of that healing so that we can listen to that inner wisdom guides us. And then we start to give it some traction with a practical process that I use that's not overly unique. It's very tangible. It's setting intentions. It's having timelines. It's speaking in the positive. There's a lot that goes into it. But I think probably the most powerful and life-changing part of the intention setting process is the accountability partner. So I'm going to invite people to have an accountability partner. I've been doing this for like 17 years with my accountability partner, and every Monday, I email him my action items, how many I did, how many I didn't do, and what are my intentions for the next week. This is where it starts to become really practical. It's really important, though, that these intentions come from what we received in vision.
I think the thing is, I couldn't teach this because I haven't been that road. I haven't taken that road. I have never had these experiences. I've never been addicted. I had the opposite kind of life that you had. In a sense, I almost resent is the wrong word. I almost feel that my parents, darn it, gave me too ideal a childhood, and I never had, except vicariously, I don't know what that kind of experience would have been like.
Wow.
To have shut down, to have had any of those experiences at all.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some believe that we choose to come in with different experiences. I
Yeah,
remember
we,
being,
we plan our lives. I planned an ideal childhood, and I planned this and I planned that. I mean, I clearly set a course so that I really would not have any of those experiences. I wish now would have had more of them, and my spirit guide is telling me in my mind right now that that was not my. I should not wish for that because that was not supposed to be what I was supposed to go through. So
my guess is that you've done that before though, and that you've healed it.
I have
That would
done
be
all of
my
that.
guess.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure that's true.
Yeah.
He
And so you
got
get to have a different experience now and talk to a different group of people who are in a different place. And I love that your calling is helping people heal their Christianity and like return to the essential teachings of Jesus, which are so profound. I mean,
the
as
difference.
I said, I don't really have a Christian calling or a Christian path, but when I hear the words to be in this world but not of it, I think there is not a more powerful teaching. That is something to live by. Like the essential teachings of Jesus is all about love, and in that way, I think you're just such a beautiful demonstration of that. And perhaps you didn't have to have the experiences I had. I get to talk to a different group of people, someone who has been
Yes.
addicted and shut down, and
And you're right. I in other lifetimes I had plenty of the other stuff.
I'm sure.
But the point is I couldn't do this course you're teaching because I have had no in this lifetime personal experiences of the sort you've had. And I think what you're doing is perfectly glorious. I think
Thank
it's
you.
going to be a wonderful course. I'm eager to follow it and have you back to talk about how it's going. But I
Thank you.
think when you present it, you should present exactly what it's going to be because I think it's going to be extremely powerful. For people who need it, it's going to be ideal.
Well, I love that you're saying that, and I agree. And I think that really helps because that really is the ultimate truth, right? The ultimate truth of conscious creation is helping us return to that which already exists within us and become more aware of how powerful we are. And from our very first conversation, I was reflecting on our first conversation, and I happened to remember I was in my sister's home and I had my laptop and I didn't know you yet. And we had this absolutely magnificent conversation on your show. And I just fell in love with you and what you're doing in the world. And that was in 2015. And here we
Yeah.
are. Love that.
Yes.
So I love that you're framing that like we get to go back to that idea and that knowing of our own infinite beingness and infinite potentiality that lives within us.
Well, the thing is, our lives are on very different tracks, but each of us, I think, is being called to do something that is of really powerful service in the world. And the thing is, what you're going to do is take people who have been damaged in pretty significant ways, to take those people and help them to have a complete fresh start, which takes them back and lets them take each of the steps necessary to begin again completely. And only you could really do that because you've been through all of that. And you're smart enough to have done all of the things they will really need to do. Most people who do work with addicts haven't done the whole route that you've done. As I say, I was blown away. The book you wrote was exactly the teachings of Jesus without Jesus in them.
I've been revisiting Conscious Being, my first book, because I've just been creating these like mini quotes, and I might be doing like little decks of cards for people to have paragraphs from Conscious Being. And I spent 2 days creating these. and going back through conscious being, and I haven't revisited it in a while. And I found myself sort of falling in love with my first book, which, I just
You should. I mean,
sort of
it's a
moved on.
terrific book.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, it's a wonderful book. And you got all of that from, and this is why people think, which he didn't do, but people think that he did travel, to hobnob with Buddha and hobnob with Krishna and all of that, because these are all core teachings. He never did travel to the Far East, but
Yeah.
he could have, because these are deep universal teachings. And which I don't think just about anybody else who went through what you did, you also studied all of that. I mean, I give you such props for doing all of that.
Oh, thank you. And I love that you're talking about just really tapping into universal truths, because when we do tap into and remember our true nature and live in that, we do pick things up in consciousness that are going to be universal truths that are beyond
Yes.
any kind of religiosity. So in that way, Jesus didn't need to travel, to the Far East to tap into the universal truth that Buddha did 500 years earlier, right? I mean, it's so clear when
Truths
we,
are universal.
yeah,
And the
it's
truths are
universal.
also not religious. Jesus did not start a religion. He
Absolutely.
started a way of life, just as they did.
That's right.
He
Wasn't it
called it
called
the
the
way.
Way in the beginning? Wasn't Christianity called the Way? Am I making that up, or is that
No,
misinformation?
that's exactly what he
Yeah,
called it. And
yeah,
then after 200 some odd years, the Romans decided that they were going to start a religion, and they did, and they botched it all. Yeah.
yes. Well, and it comes down to, like, I think about even in the recovery movement and also with religion, it's like there's an idea that if we can provide rules that will control people,
That's
and
right. It's about
in some
control
ways it's
without
worked,
fear.
because for
Right.
those people who were taught if you don't come here every Sunday, you're going to hell, that's a pretty
That's right.
motive.
That's right. It's handy. Fear controls people. Love does not. That's right.
Yes, yes. And Jesus was not about that. I mean,
No,
that I
he
know,
was a little
even
bit
though I
more than
haven't
that.
studied Christianity, that I know.
Yes, yes. But I'm eager to hear how this goes. I think you're so on the right track. I'm so excited about what you're doing, because I think it's going to work wonderfully. And this is how you truly fix people who have gone off on an addictive path. They are the only people who really can correct their path.
Yeah,
They
thank you.
didn't put themselves on the wrong path. The people that raised them, the people that, somehow got in their way did.
Yeah. And just to be clear, conscious creation isn't only for people who have had addiction, because one thing that happened when I wrote Conscious Recovery is so many people said to me, "Oh, well, I've never read Conscious Recovery because I don't have an issue with addiction." And so I started meditating and reflecting on what would Conscious Recovery for everyone look like? And that's what Conscious Creation was born out of. It's not for someone, only for someone who's had addiction. It's really for everyone. And that became a passion of mine, not in my mind, but I practiced the living in that vision, and it kept emerging to offer a very concrete and simple multi-step process to help someone reclaim their truth of who and what they are and build the life of their dreams from that place. So whether someone's had an addiction or not, they can access conscious creation.
Yes, because in fact, consciousness is all that exists.
That's right.
Nothing else exists but what we experience as consciousness.
That's right.
And so you can use consciousness to build the life of your dreams. And we've had a number of guests on who all use the same consciousness and have used the same consciousness to build the life of their dreams. In fact, our next guest will be a woman who did just that. She was in a wheelchair, and just by using consciousness, she managed to heal herself when the doctors had given up on her. You and I know that would be pretty easy to do, right?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And that is finally, I think, I will say finally, collective consciousness is starting to at least be curious about that, right? In the medical industry. Like, I remember being a little kid and thinking, this placebo thing is really interesting to me. Like, someone can take, wait, you're telling me someone can take a sugar pill and because they believe it's going to heal them, it does? Why aren't we studying that more? I mean, that was when I was a little kid. So I think it's become part of my passion because I had that knowing so early. And then at the same time, the medical establishment can both acknowledge that and dismiss it at the same time is baffling to me because the power of consciousness, we often say the power of the mind, and really it's the power of consciousness, and it can be channeled through the mind, is so powerful and it affects the spirit. I mean, it affects the body, it affects our thoughts, it affects our emotions. We know that we can heal that way. And it's just so powerful now to see that the medical establishment is at least becoming curious about it. We'll say that.
And somebody 2,000 years ago said, if you have as much faith as a grain of mustard seed, which is the smallest of the seeds, and you say to a mountain, go throw yourself into the ocean, and you have that much faith and you don't doubt, the mountain will obey you.
That's right.
So what is
Nobody
that?
said that, Roberta.
Yeah, right. Yeah, see, Jesus understood the power of consciousness, right?
That's right.
2,000 years ago, everything he taught operates on consciousness. He understood consciousness 2,000 years ago. How's that for amazing? He could have
And
written your book.
yeah, and what's amazing is, and I actually open conscious being with this, that what was once for a handful of masters has now become possible for all of us to access. So,
Right.
2,000 years seems like a long time, but in consciousness, it's really not that long that we're finally, oh,
Right.
that's what the teaching is. That's what Buddha was saying. That's what Jesus was saying, right? And so now we're at a place where we say, oh, it's not just for these unique set of people, it's for all of us to access.
That's
So
right.
we're all evolving. And I know that's what you and I are most passionate about. This is for everyone now.
It is so extraordinary. I should have had you back a lot sooner. I get distracted by, shiny objects. I hear from agents every single week, and they show me a shiny object. I say, okay, and then another one, okay. And then pretty soon I've got, 3 months of guests lined up. I'm going to put you in every few months, and then that won't happen again.
I absolutely would love that and do love that. Thank you.
So, but we've come to the end of our time, if you can believe it. I can't believe how quickly time passes. What do you want people to take away from what we've said this week?
I think my takeaway is generally some variation of the same thing that we've been talking about. And that is if you have forgotten or if no one has told you yet today, the truth of your being, the truth of who you are is an infinite being, that you came into this world as a spark of divinity. And regardless of what has happened and regardless of what you have done, you have direct access to that. You are a mystical being and you deserve a life filled with love, connection, and infinite possibilities.
And all you have to do is find a person that you resonate with who can help you in that journey. But you are the person who will make that journey. It
Yes.
is all within you to make that journey. A journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step, and it doesn't take long to make it.
Yes.
My dear, I'm so glad we did this today. Oh, you just have really made my day. Bless you. And I love you. I think you're wonderful.
Thank you. I love you too.
So everyone, this has been so much fun. We're going to do this again really soon. TJ Woodward's website, not surprisingly, is tjwoodward.com. And once again, my dear beloved friends, we've come to the end of our time together. This has been Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. I'm so happy you could be with us today. Please never forget that you are a powerful, eternal being. You never began, you never will end. And when you get what that means, it changes everything in your life for the better. Next week, our guest will be Brandy Gilmore. She'll be with us for the second time after an accident. Brandy was confined to a wheelchair with a very painful condition, and she was told it was lifelong. Forget doing anything else with your life. But she said, In 2015, she was able to demonstrate how she had healed herself and she demonstrated it in real time under thermal medical imaging. Soon after that, she was invited to deliver a TEDx talk. Oh, when you see her, you will not believe how she has transformed her life. Her podcast is called Heal Yourself, Change Your Life, and her new book just out is called Master Your Mind and Energy to Heal Your Body. Brandy is a force of nature. She was our guest for the first time a few months ago, and I couldn't wait to have her back. So she's coming next week. I think you're going to love this, so please be sure to join us next week. This week, our guest has been another force of nature. TJ Woodward has been with us for the 6th time. He's a spiritual seeker, teacher, and just an all-around wonderful person. I can heartily recommend all his books. His first one was Conscious Being, Awakening to Your True Nature. Then came Conscious Recovery, a fresh perspective on addiction and conscious creation. 5 steps to embracing the life of your dreams. I can't wait to have him back to talk about this new course, which I would love to have the ability to give, but I don't have his range. I could never give that course. His website is tjwoodward.com, and I just love this man, and you will too, as you get to know him better. As you know, our great friend Craig Hogan is the president of Seek Reality Online, which is your one-stop resource for all things afterlife. Just go to seekreality.com and start to learn for yourself that your own reality is eternal, like it or not. And some people say, I don't care, I don't want to live forever. Well, too bad, so sad. If you're alive now, you always, always will be alive. So learn the ultimate truth from our dear friend Craig, who is your worldwide ultimate expert on all things afterlife. And teachingsbyjesus.com is your single resource for all the beautiful divine truths that are brought to us in perfect love by the greatest teacher of them all, Master Jesus. Now it really is his turn. As Christianity, which is the religion he did not start, it was created by the Roman Emperor Constantine and not by Jesus. And as it finally dies, the genuine teachings of Jesus can at last truly come alive for us all. As you know, I've written a bunch of books, but we can't talk about them now because I've talked for too long with my dear friend TJ Woodward. If you want to talk about anything at all, my books or anything, just go to the green contact block on robertagrimes.com and shoot me an email. I really do answer all my emails, but it can take a week sometimes since I get so many of them. Just be sure to give me your correct email address. And all of the more than 550 past episodes of Seek Reality are available wherever podcasts are found. You also can see the new video episodes each week on Roku, Fire Stick, YouTube, and elsewhere. Meanwhile, this has been Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. Please enjoy and make the most of this coming week in our one shared reality, always knowing that you are a powerful, eternal being, and you, most of all, in this whole universe. You in particular are infinitely, eternally, and perfectly loved.
You've been listening to Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. Roberta blogs and answers questions at robertagrimes.com. Join us every week as we explore what the afterlife evidence and modern science combine to tell us is true about the one reality we all share. Knowing the truth changes everything.